Hello and welcome to this astrological chart reading. I have been wanting to do this for a long time. Originally, I was going to be doing Miley Cyrus's chart and having a look there, but a friend of mine was messaging me the other day and said, "Why don't you do Nelly Furtado's chart?" And I was like, that's a good idea. I've always been very interested in her, and so why not? So if you have the time, put the kettle on. I've just made myself a cup of tea. So I do apologize if I am, having a sip of tea or slurping throughout this chat. The way that I like to do my readings is kind of just very casual, like I'm talking right now. It's like, this is how I talk. If you're sitting in front of me, this is how I'd be talking to you. So just envision me sitting in front of you, and then that's probably the best way to go about this. So if you are new to my channel, just quickly putting it out there, hello, my name is Goliath. That is my astrological astrologer, artist, author. It's my name. My pseudonym, for those of you that know my other name, it's Lucas. So hello, yes, bringer of light. I believe the name means light bringer. So tongue-tied. I am an astrologer, and I do study occult science. And this is more of a deeper dive. I deep dive into people's charts. I've only recently started doing this. I did do Taylor Swift. I did do Lana Del Rey's chart, and I will be doing analyzing and looking at astrological charts of maybe celebrities or people in the public eye. I don't usually do this because I'm not really like a person that has like a lot of fanning. I don't fan over people. I don't like drool over people. I don't like, celebrities don't really faze me. The reason that I'm really doing this is because if you would like to book me for an MP3 recording of me looking at your chart like this, then that's what I do. So you can go and book me for that service on my website. I now do offer a 20-minute reading, and I also offer a 45-minute reading as well. So if you like my vibe and you like how deep I go and you like what I look at and how I communicate, then let me have a look at your chart. I'd love to. I am totally fascinated with this, and you can do that. So that being said, I want to try and keep this video a little bit on the tighter side, but I can't help it because when it comes to talking about Nelly Furtado, the singer, it means a lot to me. She means a lot to me. And I think anyone who grew up through the late 90s and early 2000s, you kind of know what I mean. It was a really amazing time in the world for music and pop culture, and a lot of really interesting things kind of spun out of the energy of the 90s into the 2000s. And it was so interesting because people like Britney Spears were out there doing really well. Christina Aguilera was doing really well. And then out of nowhere in the early 2000s, I think it would have been around 2001, I remember hearing the song, "I'm like a bird, I only fly," and it was like, what is this? And so different and so spiritually freeing. And I think it kind of got me because it was like so simple and in your face, the lyrics of that big hit that really blew up. And so I remember kind of researching and looking into it, and it was this 21 or 22-year-old girl at the time, and she was from an immigrated family, and she was Canadian, and her last name was Furtado. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, what pop star would ever allow that name to be public? You know, a lot of pop stars always have kind of, if their name doesn't sound appealing, they change it. And it was interesting, and I thought that's really interesting. And I remember listening to other songs as they came out, and really connecting with her, connecting with her free-spiritedness and that Sagittarian vibe that Nelly Furtado has always had. Back then, I didn't really understand a lot about astrology or planets and correlations with personalities. And as I got older, I began to understand myself deeper, because as I learnt more, and as I continue to learn more every day, the more that I know about astrology, the more I know, the more it's like the more I don't know. And then I look at all of the components that make me, me, and the things that I'm interested in people and events and places and things like that. And it all starts to make sense. And it makes sense because I'll share with you something that you may not know, but when you look out into the world and you connect with things, those things have to be on some level of correlation to your soul. So when we look out into the world, think of like in terms of a tarot card idea, like I think it's like the Two of Wands. When we look out into the world, we are looking for aspects of ourselves out there that are accepted, that are seen, that make us feel validated. And so what I'm saying is same recognizes same. And so when I look at charts, which I do now all day, it's really interesting because you'll often find in partners' charts, particularly partner charts with like husband and wife, boyfriend or girlfriend, sometimes boyfriend and boyfriend or girlfriend and girlfriend, whichever I get, I'll always find the rising or the moon or the Venus will be in the same place as their partner's sun, rising or moon. Every time. It's so obvious. It's really interesting as well because I get a lot of Sagittarians and Geminis reaching out to me for astrological chart readings now. And it's quite interesting that a lot of the Sagittarians that reach out to me, as a Sagittarian myself, they're all born on the same day as me. And it's like, what? And I know, I now understand why. Because when we feel the vibration and see and expression of the divine of who we are in the external world with other people, that frequency really hits you, you know. And so when someone makes an album like she does or like she has, for me in relation to Nelly Furtado, it was an explosion of free-spirited music that had a very beautiful tune to it, a very interesting message. There were a lot of occult themes that Nelly explored and has explored within her music about like phoenixes and rebirths and lunar phases. So she's very aware of the spiritual world, and just like a Sagittarian would be, you know, there's a gypsy energy to her. And there is a kind of like a gypsy energy to me a little bit, you know, which I'll kind of go on about in this chat, which is that with Sagittarians, you don't really get them for life. They're kind of like a Mary Poppins. And I've come to understand this about myself, and Nelly would understand this about herself, because when I look at her chart, a lot of her placements are actually completely identical to mine. So it's like the Mary Poppins of her, or of me as well, will come into a person's life at a very specific time. It could be to shake things up. It could be to get you to travel. It could be to get you to see things from a different point of view. It could open up a whole different world of thinking. And that's what culture does. That's what culture and being a Sagittarius is really about. And so as I got older, it's like a gypsy would travel, you know, would move from different relationships, would move from different families, would move from different geographical locations, lots of that type of thing. That's all Sagittarius. And that's her life. And so it's really cool to see that when you see it out there in the world, it really hits home, and same in a soul frequency always sees that in another person, because we can't really validate something or understand something that we can't take something in to ourselves if we can't integrate it, if we can't understand it. If there's no relativity to something, then it's very difficult to receive something. So love is receiving something and taking it in as a part of yourself, wounds and all, warts and all. That's what love is, okay? So if you can't understand someone, you can't really love them or understand what is best for them. Sometimes people need to be left alone. That's really, if you love them, you'd leave them alone. So it's interesting. And so when this album came out, it really kind of hit home, and I was thinking like, wow, like this is so cool. I used to sit in my garage and paint and draw and make art and just listen to this kind of joyous girl at the time, I guess you could say, that was breaking into the music industry, and she wasn't a pop princess. She didn't have backup dancers. Her songs all had depth to them. They had harmonies and, were very much about life. And the thing about Sagittarius sun or Sagittarius rising or Sagittarius moon is that there is an inner child that is laughing, and, their laugh, a Sagittarian's laugh, is very infectious, but they also have a sadness within their soul. They have a sadness to them. A lot of Sagittarians have a sad soul. And it's kind of a very poetic kind of writer or artist that really looks out into the world like, on a gypsy on the back of a wagon, that type of thing, campfire, singing songs with a guitar, sharing stories, and crying for the world at the same time. Like, as the world goes where it goes and it does what it does, and the wars and the famines and the problems and the greed, Sagittarius knows all of this. They've got an old soul. And so they've got this happiness for the world and all of its beauty, and they're crying for it at the same time as it's, kind of fucks itself over and rebirths itself in different ways and shapes and forms. And that's what Sagittarians do. They go through rebirths just like the Scorpions do. Sagittarius and Scorpio have that in common. And so it's about nature and art and beauty. And so that's where all of this magic comes from. So it's like any fire sign placement needs an audience. It's meant to be up on the stage. It's meant to be seen. If you're a Leo, if you're an Aries, if you're a Sag, that type of thing, particularly sitting around a fourth house in astrology, will have this need to be seen. And if it's a Sagittarius, which in our case, my case it is, and with Nelly's case it is too, it's a restless energy. So we come into ideas and things and meeting lots of different people, and we form lots of friendships, and then all of a sudden the Sagittarius moves on and their time with you has come to its conclusion. And that's what we do. And that's absolutely what Nelly Furtado would be doing as well. And so it's a beautiful thing. It's something that you can't really hold on to, because Sagittarians are about freedom. So let's look at the chart of Miss Nelly Furtado. Now, the details that I have here is that the most up-to-date ones that I have is that she was born on December 2nd in 1978, okay? And we see her name is Nelly Kim Furtado, Canadian singer, yes. And she's gone on to sell over 80 million albums and 20 million singles worldwide. So one of the biggest explosions of her career was, being found, being discovered, and having a way into getting a record deal. So we'll look at that, and I did select for this for this recording today that I chose the photo that was used in her first album, Whoa, Nelly, which I think is so beautiful. Like, when you look at her eyes and you look into her soul, you can see there is a very deep, intelligent, beautiful woman here. And laying in the grass, being natural, and being in the natural world is really where she is in a lot of her artwork. In the cover artwork of that album was just very down to earth, very grounded. Her sitting with an icy pole in the grass, smiling, very simple, very elegant. That type of energy is the beauty of a female Sagittarian, and they are beautiful humans. Okay, so one of the things that come up in her energy as well, so if you don't know, I am psychic medium and I'm also able to look at charts, but one of the things around Sagittarius women, and sometimes the Aries women, but today more focusing on the Sagittarian, is that they don't need partners. They need friends that build life relationships with them. Okay, Sagittarians, much like Gemini, are very difficult to date and pin down for a really long-term relationship. They have many lovers. I've had many lovers. I've had many different lives in this one life. So, and Sagittarians are like, a lot of them will be very down to earth, very grounded. They're not up in the sky, they're not crazy, and they're not aloof. A lot of them are very black and white, which is why Sagittarians do have a lot of success, because they're not in the middle of things like Libra. They don't do passive aggressive, they do aggressive. If they want something, they know they have to go for it. And they have to expect that they have the diligence and the discipline to do that. Okay, so when it comes to Sagittarians, it's very difficult to get one back in a relationship if they have walked away from you. I have a friend who's a very strong occultist, and we've talked about this before. It's very difficult to manipulate the free will of a Sagittarian. Okay, so if they come around you because they like you, that's because they like you. But if they don't, then they pull away, and it's really just about accepting that season with them is over. Okay, so they have a lot of relationships, and even when you listen to a lot of the stories of a Sagittarius and a Gemini, which Gemini bleeds over into Sagittarius in astrological, like in the chart. So a lot of them will have been an Uber driver, a game show host. They would have been on the battle lines of a war. They would have been in a boardroom with a meeting, in conducting a level of presentation. They would be on stage in theatre. They would be a director. They would be an artiste. They're fundamentally everything. So when I meet people and I talk to people about my life, and I'm sure this would be with Nelly and with any, if you're a Sagittarius listening to this now, a lot of people will think that your past is very crowded because you've done so much stuff, and even think, how did you do all that? And it's like, well, that's just life. It's like, that's just living. Forrest Gump, the character Forrest Gump would be a Sagittarius. There were so many different versions of him. As he went through his life, he really lived. He did all these different things, from being on the boat with Bubba to going to war, that type of thing. All Sagittarian, and it's all got to be rooted in reality and truth, because nothing is higher for a Sag than truth. So they are not afraid to show you how they get down and do the work. All right, they're very hardworking when they want something. All right, so Nelly Furtado, I know that her father was a bricklayer, and they immigrated from the Azores Islands, which is right out in the Pacific Ocean, and they came to Victoria, Toronto, Vancouver, BC, to start a better life for themselves. That would have been very difficult, not, learning a new language, integrating into a new culture, that type of thing. That's her family, that's her ancestry. So it's like she's not going to change her energy for other people. All right, this is who she is, this is what she does. It's the real deal. Okay, Sagittarians tend to do things the old-fashioned way. They don't like the glitter and the glamour so much. They shy away from pretentious things, like Hollywood. Like you wouldn't see Nelly Furtado, drunk at a party, getting in the back of a cab, half off her face with cocaine, on the end of her lip. Like that's not going to happen for her. It's about being mysterious. The mystique of a Sagittarius and a Scorpio is very much about knowing that, you control what you say in an interview. You control what you do, what you show other people of yourself, all right? So her sun is sitting in Sagittarius. Her external world is sitting in Sagittarius, like we know. Her moon is sitting in the Capricorn, all right? So things have not come easy for her. And the Capricorn moon is sitting at 14 degrees. It's quite strong. So that is a very hardworking person. So a lot of her productivity in her chart comes from her self-worth, comes from her productivity. All right. So that's around Capricorn in her moon. So she's a fixed energy in how she sees the world. And people born with Capricorn moon or Capricorn rising usually have to grow up really quick, and they cover a lot of ground in their life quite early on in life. All right. Her Venus is sitting in Scorpio. So she is the Scorpionic Venus, which is a beautiful place to have the Scorpio in Venus. So when she loves very, very deeply. She's very sexual. She's very sensual. That's the power of the chart being in that position with her Scorpio. Opposition is in the house. Let's have a look. So it's like Venus and Scorpio is that she will control how others see her. And in a relationship, she will so she's very protective of her public image. Okay. And that's sitting in an external house. So like I said, she isn't going to show parts of herself in an interview that she doesn't want to. Venus in Scorpio does have a desire to control in relationships. If it was a squared energy there, then it would be about restriction of freedom, but she's about the opposite. So she really values freedom in intellectual connection in a relationship, and the freedom that she can travel and just do things that she wants to do. Okay, that she needs a partner that would allow her to move freely and move quickly. Okay, so she can't have anyone holding her down. Her Mars is sitting in Sagittarius. So ultimately, she's almost a triple Sag. She's got her Mercury in Sagittarius. Her communication is very quick. It's very witty. So she could write songs or write poetry, which she uses to make money. That's what songwriters do. They're poets that turn their poems into cash. She's got a very melodic energy there with the Sagittarius in Mars. So she's got this drive to combine philosophical things with melodies, and having her Mars as well sitting in the Sagittarius. This is about culture. And so learning languages linguistically as well, because her Mercury is in Sagittarius. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nelly speaks multiple languages. I think she did even put out an album in Spanish as well. I think it was called Me Plan. I think that's what it was called. So she's very, very smart. And the moon in Capricorn means that she will finish things that she starts. She's all about learning, about life. So she would view the world as her home. The world is her stage. Financially, money comes in really quick and it goes out really just as fast as well. Her Jupiter is sitting in Leo. So she does have this expansion to play with lots of different looks, lots of different types of musical genres. So she could do with that, the Sagittarius conjunct in the Mercury. So that means that she would probably do She could do a really pop song, a really good pop song, like we know she did. When she had the album Loose, there was Promiscuous Girl, Say It Right, lots of songs on that album, different beats. The Mercury in Sagittarius and the Mars in Sag means that she will collaborate with many people. It's all like a big jam party. You know, she doesn't care about where you come from. It would be more about like, what do you bring to the table? So as an artist, Nelly wouldn't really see herself as a female artist. She would just see herself as an artist. And if you can come up with a good beat and, you know, hold her attention, then it's all fun. It's like an inner child. There's a lot of inner child and inner joy that's sitting in her chart. The Mars in Sagittarius means that lots and lots of like lovers or even situationships that she's had where she's met people, had flings, but didn't have an intention of settling down with them. Mars in Sagittarius in conjunction with her Scorpio in the Venus means usually a couple of divorces when I see those together. Venus in Scorpio doesn't usually get relationships until later on in life. But for Nelly, it's all about friendship first. So it's like she keeps friends, she keeps good relationships with her exes. She doesn't like to end things on bad notes. Sagittarians don't like to necessarily do that. I think she has had 3 kids now. But they're looking at the chart in the North Node in Virgo. So there's another side to her where she would need to just kind of like when she burns out, she needs to kind of go within and rebuild herself and retreat. So there's a retreating aspect to her as well. Saturn is sitting in the Virgo, so at times she can be quite over hard on herself, over analytical on herself, like the limitations that she places on herself is all connected to her self-value, okay? Because the Sagittarian side is flirty and fun and likes to take on and play different characters, which I think we've seen. She did some acting as well. She was on like an episode of like Cold Case, and I think she was in a film called Max Payne back in the day. So she's dabbled with acting. I do see acting as around her. It could have even been a first choice as well. But part of her Sagittarian side is she's able to get into a mindset of another person. Her Mars is sitting squared in its North Node. So she's really good at getting into someone's head and understanding how to relate to someone and build rapport with someone. She's got a very big network that she's built. It's all networking and, kind of adding things to her arsenal as an artist. So I see Nelly has learned a lot of different musical tools. Like, so she could play piano, she could play trombone, she could play the ukulele. She likes to bring in different sounds and beats to kind of mash things up and make it like 3-dimensional sounding. She does, it's all the spice of life, yeah, with the Sag. So it's all culture and spices at a marketplace and trying different things in the pot and see what works. She doesn't really have a specific thing that she would do. So marketing wise is quite different with her. Sitting in her Chiron would be like, it's in a private house. So it would be like she would, record labels would she wouldn't want a record label to control her, and she would have to have the freedom to do things that she wants to do over everything else. Because if she was stuck in a record deal that she really hated, it would affect her music because it would affect her mental health. So she kind of knows how she feels is how she creates. And so she could do anything. Like that's the thing, is that with that reinventing energy, Sagittarians are always reinventing themselves, much like the Leo. The other fire counterpart is they will experiment with different lovers of different ages. They'll experiment with maybe an orchestra band, and then the next time they might do punk rock. It's very open. everything is open and the world is a playground. That's the energy that Nelly has. For her in a partnership, it's like she will need that intellectual connection. So to keep her interested and to, attract the eye of the Sagittarian, you have to have something that they want to integrate into themselves because they are so independent and so self-sufficient. So in a relationship, she would have to be in the center. Sun in Sagittarius, they usually put themselves in the center of relationships, and that's usually where the relationship is based. They are the sun. They bring the light, and that her moon is sitting in the Sag as well. So it's like she would probably go for men that would be a counterpart to her because she is quite complex. So that she would need more of a masculine energy, like that's more simple and more straightforward, not pretentious. So she'd probably go for like car mechanics or people that wouldn't even necessarily be in the industry of making music and producing songs and marketing and things like that. She goes for opposites because it gets her out of her own head and it keeps her in her own lane. Libra energy for her, it would almost be like a hyper masculine man that's very Viking like, would be what she's attracted to, like basketball players I see around her. But if it's like a Libra energy, it would take away a lot of the brutishness of that or make it more less like dominating in its masculinity. So that's where she would be. It would have to be very kind. And with her, let's have a look. What was so the Taurus energy. So her home is very important to her as well. So the Chiron sitting in Taurus is about financial stability. So having lack of financial stability in her life would have like really propelled her to want to be successful because that's Capricorn moon really needs that. It needs to drive to create money to feel secure. So her home or the homes that she has would be very beautiful and they would be updated and kept fresh with different designing and furniture and things like that. And so she's probably bought people in her family homes. Like she's taking care of everyone around her. I see she's very generous with that energy as well. The Jupiter in Leo usually does that for family members. They'll buy houses for their brother and sister and their mum and make sure their grandma's, really taken care of. They have that generosity to them. So she does have a lot of generosity. Energetically, the color turquoise sits with Nelly as well. So it's whether it's a color that she wears the most, that's the color that she looks in the best. It's like it brings out the green and the blue in her eyes. So I see that as well. But yeah, I mean, she's very real. She's very raw, very down to earth, and like simple taste in things. And it's all about flavor to her. So the food has to have flavor. I think she really enjoys the food from her native homeland, which is like different stews and lentil beans and pasta dishes and stuff like that. And it's like I just see her like a melting pot of life and culture and even things that she's bought from around the world that she's got in her home from times where she was on tour, and also being a mother as well and handling the public. With that Scorpio in Venus, she'd be very protective around her children. So she'd really do her best to like protect their privacy. That Pluto in Libra is all about beauty. So it's like nature, animals, and that really deep spiritual vibe that Nelly had, that Canadian spirit that she had when her first few albums came out. So she'd be like going to the beach and collecting shells and going to the zoo and, deer horns and crystals and things like that. That's all around her in her chart too. So it's just a beautiful chart to look at, and it's it's strange. Like there's reading there. She does reading. There's a lot of reading there as well, like reading energy. She's very emotionally connected to everything that she does. I also see her working with like pottery or something, whether she's done pottery. Sometimes she wants to be on stage and she wants to be seen. And then other times she wants to work in like a record store or work on a pottery wheel. She does extreme, Sagittarius does extreme things anyway to get out of patterns. So the darker side of her chart was the North Node sitting in the Virgo. I'm not sure where Lilith was placed, but it's also is that she could have a tendency to overindulge in things, maybe like with food or, Sagittarians tend to do that a little bit, a few drinks and it's kind of like verbal diarrhea, that type of thing can happen. So knowing when to rein it in and handle herself socially. But the Virgo means at times she could disappear. She may want to just say, I'm going to take a year off and chill out with my family, that type of thing. So it's very internal. There's internal parts to her chart, and then there's massive external parts, which explosions like world tours and reinventing herself and coming into being sexy and working with TikTok and working with new age technology and stuff like that, like having to adapt and grow as the world has grown around her as well. So I see that as well. But as a mother, she's very fair. She's really instilled a lot of hard work into her kids. And that's like an energy that I see there as well. For her, it's not really about the money. It's more about the art. So she kind of goes where she feels pulled. Like if she wants to make a really alternative, I think she did put out a record. She put out an album back in like 2017, The Ride, I think it was, which was like very alternative, kind of like, I think that the way I felt it was like sitting in a vegan restaurant or something. It was very different to a lot of the stuff that she'd done, and it was marketed differently. But now she's kind of come back to, tight fitting clothes and her hair out. Like the Sagittarian's mane is very long and wavy and free and sexual, being the center of desire, and also just kind of blowing up in her 40s again. There's like a reinvention there in her chart as well. Between 28 to 32, there was some hard times. That's when her Saturn return came around. So it might have been like she was burnt out, or she was kind of questioning, why am I doing this? But yeah, it's like very up and down, but mostly it's quite stable. I wouldn't be surprised if Nelly was ADHD as well, if she had that, because that much Sagittarius can be quite tricky in terms of like holding attention, like very short attention span, very frenetic energy. Geminis do that as well. So that's what I see. But other than that, I mean, it's a beautiful chart, and no matter what she does, it's as long as it feels authentic to her. Her family is very important to her, and it's all about the family at the moment with her energy. So this is me having a bit of a quick look at her chart. I hope that this has all made sense. And if you would like to book me for a 20-minute reading or a 45-minute reading of me unpacking your chart, I'm really, really happy to do that. Just go to my website and click on the link, send in the details, and I'll make you a chart reading, and you can enjoy your chart reading. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I've really enjoyed looking at her chart. It's a lot of similarities to me in my life. And, as Sages age, they mellow a bit, and it will be like, sitting at the beach with a joint, that type of thing. She'd be sitting on a rocking chair looking out at the world, that laughing and crying for the world at the same time. When all the innocence is gone, that type of thing. That's Sag, So if you are one, let me know. Leave a comment below. I'd love to know what you think about this reading, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. Come to my channel and come to my website and book me, and I look forward to receiving your emails and getting to work on your chart. Bye, bye, bye.